Please, my friend. All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's edition of the Regenerative Finance Aligned Voter Committee meeting. I am your moderator, Kianga, also known as FHOmoney.eth, which stands for Future History of Money. And we have MakerDAO's members in the house, Christian and Mike. Thank you for being here. And we're really excited today. We've got a special guest from Powerhouse. Call Me T is here and is going to be presenting to us today an update and information I know that we're all super excited to hear about. And I see another Powerhouse member joining in the room. So great to see you. Just want to mention just two things quickly before I hand over the mic. Number one is that I highly, highly recommend last week's Sovereign Finance AVC meeting. I know that some of the ADs I see here were there in that meeting, but for all alignment conservers, especially AVC members, aligned delegates, there was just a great conversation with DWIZ, and I learned a ton about spell crafting process and what the teams have been doing since protocol engineering stepped down several months ago, and how they're thinking about this next era of governance security. And I just really want to commend SoFi. I don't know if any of them are here right now, but I just really want to commend them for that meeting. And I thought it was very effective, that it was both DWIZ and someone who had posted, another organization that posted something in the forum making suggestions. So in the context of the AVC meeting, there was a real dialogue and almost debate among people who are very technically expert, but in a way that a non-technical person could follow. And I just thought it was a great example of how useful these AVC meetings could be. So I commend them and recommend, I know that they post their meetings, I think, on their own channel. So definitely recommend checking that out. And for this meeting, for this week, Regenerative Finance AVC, for those who may not be familiar, we are MKR holders who are meeting weekly and following the rules of the Atlas around governance and thinking, and right now at the edge of our seats to better understand how we're going to move forward this year in our work. And this week in particular, we're thinking about the stability scope, which doesn't constrain Powerhouse whatsoever and what they're going to present to us today. But I think we're going to hear something that ties into real world assets, for example. But in any case, everything that we're about to hear is going to be relevant to our work, relevant to the AVC's thinking about governance strategy, and certainly can, I'm sure, apply to our thoughts about the stability scope. So just want to give that plug for ecosystem team if anyone's taking notes as to whether we follow the rules. We are definitely keeping in mind policy for stability scope as we have this wonderful presentation today and discussion. So with that, want to hand it over to you, Call Me T. Take it away.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, we have a bit of a community update today. It's more of a introduction to document models and why that's exactly such a key primitive in the operating system, or a Lego in the applications that Powerhouse is trying to build. I'll share my screen and give the presentation. I will probably not catch a lot of the questions that might pop up, but I see we have Caldas here, we have Layer 0 here, so I think they're gonna be so kind to catch all the questions. And then at the end of the update, we can maybe spend some time to answer some of the questions that might pop up and get into a discussion. All right, let's see how I'll probably have to share my complete screen. Okay. I guess you're all seeing this, right? If somebody could just give me a voice update because I can't see my other screen right now.
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll just hit it off. So yeah, Powerhouse, our second community update. If you didn't catch the first one, it's still available on the YouTube channel of Seed Latam, where we gave a little bit more of the background of Powerhouse, where we came from, how this team originated from SES, Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Unit, and how we're still very much focusing on similar teams, but now, building this decentralized operations toolkit for open and decentralized organizations. So a little bit of a recap of last time, so everybody can just follow along easily. But we're building this open source operating system where successful business processes of DAOs can easily be shared as best practices. And we do that by capturing them in document models. And these document models will be the topic of this community update. So capturing data in a structured way in document models happens by us by currently analyzing business processes and then identifying and capturing these best practices, but always in co-creation with the relevant DAO stakeholders and with the key decision makers, the contributors that live it day in, day out. So that's a bit of our process there. And within that vision, within that mission, we are heavily focused on automation and AI integration so that the future open organizations and DAOs can also really leverage this innovation phenomenon that is picking up. And that's also where document models come in. Now, in the past, being SES, we have worked and are currently also still working, being Powerhouse on several prototypes or exercises that actually have a close relation to some of the applications that Powerhouse will be releasing in the near future, such as Fusion, a future public collaboration and transparency dashboard or hub, where contributors can find all of the latest information about projects and the necessary dashboards. Then there is Connect, which is a private contributor editor or application in which contributors actually access and interact with these document models I've already mentioned. There is something like Renown that currently doesn't necessarily have a prototype, but will become a decentralized identity and reputation system that also manages all of the permissions and authentication of contributors when interacting with document models or with the DAO. And then there is Switchboard, the brain of any organization, or the API interface to interact with all the data that document models are capturing. Obviously, there's also room for an academy, or there is an opportunity to set up an academy application where new or existing contributors get educated, get updated on the latest, what is happening in their specific organization. So the topics of today are: what is a document model exactly? Why did we choose it as a foundational element within the Powerhouse vision? And what's so special about them then exactly? And how that all ties into automation and AI readiness. So what is a document model? You can actually see a document model as the perfect template to capture any type of business logic that is already happening in a digital process. So document modeling is this process of capturing the best practices of an organization and embedding them into document templates or into software. And you could think of the perfect template for capturing timesheets, or you could think of the perfect template for setting up a project budget scope. a template where all of the necessary features and input fields are present to guard the contributor to the desired outcome and to provide guidelines in how this process would ideally be captured, stored, and visualized. So why do we model documents then? Well, it is because we want to stop new contributors from always getting lost in the same messy onboarding processes or making the same mistakes. We want to stop experience, intelligence, and skill sets leaving a DAO when senior contributors move on to greener pastures. And we want to embed these clear guidelines, priorities, and directions into software, into document models. On top of that, document models also heavily help with automatically tracking and measuring crucial metrics since they are embedded as part of the template. Now, a good example of such a document model that we're currently working on and is still in a wireframing stage is the scope of work document model, which is a document model intended to keep track of everything that requires deliverables, progress tracking, milestones, and a way to generate result-driven project roadmaps with tangible results. So in this document model, we can see features such as estimation timelines, a roadmap with milestones, key deliverables listed in a way that we can track them and zoom into them deeper, an estimated budget indication. And these are the type of features that through sitting together with key stakeholders in DAOs are being extracted or are being defined as crucial features to guide a contributor towards the desired outcome. Now, another document model that we have been discussing in our previous community update was the real-world assets portfolio reporting document model, which is a document model for keeping track and reporting on all of the real-world assets portfolios for MakerDAO by the different arrangers. And in this specific document model, which in this case is already visualized in our private contributor application Connect, the user has logged in and is navigating up to the desired folder or team drive where these document models are then present or can be deployed, can be used as templates, and can then, as you see here, differentiate or look at the previous version of the portfolio and the current version of the real-world asset portfolio. It offers opportunities to edit the different transactions or add new real-world assets that make up the portfolio. So this is one of the document models that is in its furthest stage and will this year also be demoed to some of the stakeholders. So obviously we are building editor components, we are building all of these tools to make the process of document modeling available to open organizations, which also brings, or hopefully will bring, an open source library of document models available, where indications can be shown as to how this specific document model influenced the organization, what impact it had, and what secondary interfaces or results it drove or created. Now, we are very curious about what type of process you want to capture. We are very curious what type of document model you're going to come up with and what structure you would like to formalize. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you see any clear opportunities within the environments that you operate. Now, what's so special about them? They are nothing like a traditional document. It's not just a highly specialized Google template. They are built differently, and the specific architecture of a document is exactly what offers us new possibilities for process automation. Since document models are self-contained data structures, so they operate with a set of chronologic operations, and those operations can be seen as the editing history of the document. So if you would replay the operations or modifications that have happened to the document, you would have the document end up in its same final state. And those operations are being applied by a processor that comes packaged with each model, and once applied, then result into the final state. If I would visualize it with this little visual, then you can see here on the left our list of operations, or the document's history, where data objects specify one of the exact operations that, for example, an arranger might have applied in a real-world assets portfolio document model, such as update the title, create an asset, update the price, and save the asset. A processor is then taking the last operation and applies it to the previous state to generate a new state. And this state is exactly what is driving the front end in Connect, and allows us to extract additional layers of data from this self-contained data document. So if we make that a little bit more tangible, and I make it run through the Powerhouse operating system, so to say, then a contributor will come into Renown, set up their Ethereum address as their identity, and get permission to edit a certain document, for example, a real-world assets portfolio in Connect. They would open up Connect and start editing that document in their local environment. So as I mentioned before, a contributor might search in one of the drives that is available to them. In this case, it might be the Monetalis theme drive that is hosted in the cloud, and they get access to the folder where the real-world asset portfolio document models are existing, and they add a transaction or they add an asset to the portfolio. So at this point, we're very granularly capturing the process. We're capturing all the data, and we can see that the edits that are happening to the document model are being generated as in the form of data objects, in the form of operations that that we can replay to end up with the same final state as the latest document. Now, this specific design pattern where we make use of operations is very much similar to a transaction-based design pattern, and that might be familiar to you from blockchain networks, where a transaction gets synchronized across all of the nodes of the network to be verified and confirmed. In our case of synchronizing a document model or synchronizing documents across a network, it is a specific operation that has been applied to the document model that gets synchronized across all of the copies of that document model or document that exist in the different drive storages. So in a blockchain network, a transaction is the most granular atomic unit of the system. In our case, it is an operation which is the most granular atomic unit of the system. So this public drive where the document instance exists could be public, but could also be a local drive when you prefer to work in privacy or in private mode for a while before publishing the document to the rest of your team or the organization that you're working with. Now, the cool thing about this process of document modeling and this transaction-based design pattern is that you can use it for a lot more things than just capturing or structuring documents or processes. You can actually apply it to any type of abstract process that you can think of. And in our case, that means that we can also start using it for software actions or for certain goals that we have within our applications, such as setting up a new drive instance, setting up a new environment where you will be storing those document models. And the actual actions or operations that can be taken to set up such a drive instance can also be defined as operations. So here we see add drive input, delete drive, add file, add folder as a potential operations that can be run through or applied to get to the final stage where a drive storage has been deployed within Connect. And that's the power of document modeling. So what we see is that it is structurally, or it is very smart to start structurally capturing data in an organization. It would be even smarter if you start using document models to do that in a very systematic way. And then there's really a lot of opportunities once you start really running your operating system on those document models. And what those opportunities are is what I would like to discuss in the next few slides. So this transaction-based design pattern is ideal for financials and collaborations, since we always have access to the previous states of a document and not only the last one. We can always track who changed what at any point in time, and we can start branching different versions of a document and synchronize them again later, very similar to Git branches. We have to only synchronize the changes instead of uploading and downloading the complete document, which in our case means adding the latest modifications to the document in the form of operations to the synchronization cycle. Now, maybe the most important one or the most important feature that we unlock by working with document models in open organizations is that we can interact at the input and output level of the document model. So it offers developers the ideal specification format to quickly turn the business logic into production-grade code. By working with document models, we can make contributors, business analysts, stakeholders bridge the gap with software developers, since the way they are capturing data and processes with a document model is in a form of machine-readable language that a developer can work with. I'll dive into this a little bit deeper. So here we are again in our familiar real-world assets portfolio. And we have this document model with its operations that generate a specific state. But from these operations, we can also generate operational data, which is state data modeled in a traditional database table that some of you might be familiar with. And this is the type of data that is easy to query and easy to work with. You could, for example, request from this data layer, what is the current total amount of assets in the portfolio? Now, an additional layer of data is the analytics data, when we start to take into account time as a metric and can generate business insights based on time series data. The queries that you could unleash on such type of data are, for example, what are the total amount of profits in the RWA portfolios when we compare January 2024 versus January 2023. And since we can capture easily these three types of data with the document model, operation history being a list of the operations and edits applied to the document, operational data being the latest content of the document in a traditional database format, and then the analytics data as business insights about the data evolving over time, we essentially create three types of machine-readable data that turn document models into self-contained databases with API access. And that's something that can be really powerful for DAOs and open organizations, since now our third application, Switchboard, as an open API interface, can directly interact with the input and output data that we have been capturing within the organization. And then obviously can start driving these insights to visualize interfaces, dashboards, and charts within Fusion, our public collaboration platform. So Switchboard offers developers the opportunity to interact with this data through a GraphQL interface and automate certain triggers for certain automated actions, or drive certain charts and interfaces based on the data that the organization is capturing. Now, if we look into the last part of the potential that document models can unlock, we're looking at automation and AI readiness, automation through AI. So we see that almost any organization nowadays has a huge need to start really developing a strategy and a method around implementing this innovation phenomenon that AI is showing to be. And then the second question always becomes, how do you enable these models? How do you these large language models? How do you implement agents within your infrastructure? And do we actually have the right foundation and infrastructure to apply these new technologies? And that's exactly what we also want to offer, being Powerhouse. We want our organizations that make use of the toolkit to run on clean and structured operational data, to have the ability to set up a data pipeline of operational data that's specific to the DAO, that is specific to the organization, so that they can train a specific large language model on top of a general model with DAO knowledge that is otherwise very hard to capture or needs extensive work to be cleaned up. And yeah, this is one of the bigger potentials that we see when implementing document models as a structured way to capture data. And that also really allows organizations to unlock this collective intelligence that is hard to capture, but that is present in a DAO, and to embed it into software, to deploy agents and to deploy large language models on their specific data so that they can function as the brain of the organization plugged in to everything. Where then obviously we could have very straightforward scenarios that could deliver huge impacts to the contributors. For example, here we have Alice, who's a financial analyst with a certain reputation level, and Bob, who's a smart contracts developer. But both come from a different background and might want to keep track of all the information chaos that is often present in a DAO. And they are asking our central brain what was discussed in the last governance meeting. And each of them gets their custom tailored answer, where Alice gets an update on the ETH stability fee that has risen, and Bob gets an update on the vulnerabilities that were discovered in the last audit. But it's because we now are working with document models that we can operate with at the input and output level. We can also take next actions based on the tailored advice that the AI model might offer to our specific contributors. So with this community update, I hope to have given you a little bit of an insight into what we're building, why we're building it, how we're building it, and that it inspires you and makes you hopeful of what is to come. I'm going to stop here and come back to our Discord environment to see if there's some questions that we can answer as a team.
Great, thank you so much for that. Would it be helpful for me to go through the comments and call them out?
Yeah, that would be great. I think that could work.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I've been keeping track. Let me. Okay, sort of around 3:15, there was a conversation, some comments from one of our one of our aligned delegates, Ikagi, asking about timesheets and whether there was an intention to have ecosystem actors report every hour that they work. Sisyphus questioned whether output sheets would be used instead. So I'm not sure that you specifically covered that, but if that rings a bell in terms of your presentation, or also Ikagi, if you want to drop another note at the bottom of the chat as to what your questions were there. But maybe I guess it's sort of asking about what we were capturing, or what some of the inputs would be.
Yeah, I think in this specific case, we don't necessarily want to define for anybody what exactly should be captured. Like the tooling we're providing is very free to use for the use case that seems fit for the organization. I don't think we currently have strong opinions on what exactly is worth capturing, and that should probably something that the DAO comes up with or gets consensus about. So I think timesheets, are a great way to be captured in a document model. the specific granularity might be a topic for discussion. But yeah, it could be it's a great example of how timesheets could drive a certain interface or a certain chart about expenses, etc. Yeah, we do see that potential.
Yeah, and this makes me think about project-based financing, something we've been discussing and hearing about in the abstract. If Sisyphus later says, just thinking that instead of focusing on time put in, one could focus on initiatives worked on and results, which could also build in a contributor's reputation. So I would just add on to that whether, oh, and I see Dennis is here. Hello. Where we are as an organization that you may know of, or that Powerhouse is working on, or that you're aware of in terms of, this work around project-based financing, which I think I've heard at some times the expenses dashboard. I mean, my sense is there's some way that this is trying to come together as an organization, our plan for how we're doing budgets, where we have more of a way to specify what MakerDAO wants and have external parties maybe bid, and have the deliverables closely tied in with outputs and performance metrics. Just wondering if anyone in the room on the call has a sense of where we are with that and how it relates to what you presented here today.
Yeah, if I may, I completely agree. I think there's some work happening in the DAO, but also some external context. It's kind of all moving into this direction where it's all going to build on top of each other, right? I think Powerhouse, but also BA Labs like Block Analytica, another another team within the DAO that's doing great work. They're really pushing for this really solid operational data layer in the DAO. And then another initiative is more about structuring the ways in which, for example, budgets and deliverables are tied together and reported on. And then there's all these, there's of course the Atlas, but also all these front ends being developed. And then there's also this bigger AI context that's happening around us, right? And it's just, you don't need a lot of technical know-how to see how all those developments kind of lead into this this future state where it's just going to be very powerful to have that kind of a data set to basically have AI agents use that, right, and help with creating transparency, practical verifiability, but also decision making. So I think you're right there, Kian. I'm really excited about that as well.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm glad you're here to add that context. So Kilgore, I see your comment that the hope is people will come up with new document models that work for the DAO, whether it be project-based financing, RWA tracking, people ops, and/or spreadsheet documents. Any process in a DAO that is done frequently could benefit from a document model. So if I may, as a very non-technical person, just give a sort of what I think I'm taking away from your presentation and what you've talked to us about, which is a very open source, a model, a tool, but not necessarily the actual thing that you're proposing or that anyone specifically has proposed that we implement. And so as I'm thinking about, the AVC's responsibilities and the alignment conservers around the Atlas endeavor, right? So ecosystem has been gearing us up for journeys around these different spheres of activity, capturing, structuring, and grounding, right? That's converging, right? I mean, Dennis, what you just talked about are like all of these things converging in a way that, we're all still, those of us who are not working on the different bits, we're trying to make some sense of and see where does the rubber hit the road for each of us in our roles. But that we've just heard a presentation about some tools that are being made available, and I don't even have the words for it. This is all so new for me. But how would you really, maybe T, could you say, just taking 1,000 step back, like what is a document? I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I know about pieces of paper. And a little bit more than that, but your concepts are still this is all very new to me. It's very exciting, and so I'm seeing that this is something way beyond, even like a Google Doc, and it's very code. It seems to be sort of very code language. Could you just say a little bit in maybe more normie terms, what's a document, and maybe explain again what you were saying? It's transaction based. I mean, I love this. I'm kind of seeing it, but I still need a little more, I guess, description, or maybe it reiterated.
No, that's great feedback. So when we think of a document, let's use some terms that we're all familiar with. So if we have an Excel sheet or a Google sheet that we are capturing, or that we are using to capture a Gantt chart or a timeline of a certain project. So now we have created a traditional document that is being shared in the organization. So we could apply a document modeling process to that document. So if we try to capture the goal of our traditional document, the Google Sheets, into a document model, it means that we start to specify, okay, we're trying to create a project overview or a project roadmap. Let's specify what are all the different operations and all the different steps that can be taken or that should be taken to get to the desired outcome. And all of those steps, all of those operations become part of the document model. And by very specifically defining the necessary steps that should be taken and that guide our contributor to the desired outcome, we have also designed a list of operations that allows developers to interact with at a machine readable level or at an input output level. So any type of traditional document could become a document model by specifying it more granularly and very systematically define what actually has to happen in this document, and figuring out the way to do that in the best way, and then turning that best way into a set of operations. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. So would you say then that the user is a programmer, though? I mean, we're talking about the operations of engineers who are writing code.
Well, and this is the interesting part about document modeling. It doesn't necessarily, like, the user definitely doesn't have to be a developer. The user is just interacting with the document model at a user interface level through Connect, through the interface that you saw with the real world assets portfolio. A user is just creating input field or filling in input fields and adding data to the document. But by doing this, they are triggering operations, and those operations are being played or being saved in the backend. And in terms of, will a normal user be able to generate a document model or create one? Well, here there's probably an opportunity to sit down with a business analyst at this stage of where Powerhouse is. But in the future, we could imagine that a normal user could potentially drag and drop certain elements that make up their perfect document in a drag and drop interface, and then in the backend, a document model is being created of the document that they assembled.
That's incredible. I mean, I don't know if anyone else on the call kind of relates to my sense of mystification. It's all very second nature for you all building this, but I mean, this is like a completely new brain space what you're describing. And just to go back to the chat, Bona Publica, further up around 3:18 p.m. writes, how are you thinking with regards to the DAO ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the data? So yeah, recognizing that, of course, people have to be permissioned. But yeah, how are you thinking about the verification of those users and protection against bad actors at the user level for inputs?
Yeah, so here renown starts to play a role, and authentication or permission set by certain addresses that are recognized to be good actors are a starting point. So yeah, this vision is currently has a little bit less of attention, since we're very much still building the foundational layer of Powerhouse. But Renown as a decentralized identity, reputation, and authentication system will play its role here.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good segue to the next question from Ikagi, and thumbs up by Cloaky. Why not buy something like this from a software company? Or can you speak about how custom this is, and the extent to which you're using existing software, or what the choices were made in that regard?
Yeah, I think Wouter would be really good at speaking to that specific point. There is the open source vision that Powerhouse is chasing or putting forward, where once this system is in place, additional contributors could generate plugins or create plugins to build further on top of this system. So that's maybe one reason as to why we really want to open source this idea, and make the complete open organization scene make use of it. There's likely some companies that you could buy similar services from, or where they would go through the process of model documents together with you. Yeah, in our case, it's very DAO focused. It's very, at this case, maker focused. So yeah, that might be my answers that I could come up with in regards to that question.
Okay, great. So this is something your team is building internally in terms of the engineering of it. Even though, I recognize it's open. And is the concept in this question, is the concept of the document that you've described, this is maybe betray my ignorance, but is that a industry-wide concept, or was that something you and Powerhouse really developed as a thing, as an approach?
So this is a very good point that I might want to mention in any future presentations. But this idea of document modeling, or capturing a certain process of an organization in a very specific and systematic document model, is a practice that is pretty old. Some might it's not necessarily a very sexy practice, or it's not a type of software pattern or practice that is flashy and famous, but it is there's a rich history in it, as well as in meta modeling, as I shown, where this modeling process is being used for actually model software operations and set up this drive storage with the help of operations. So there is a rich history in terms of expertise and inspiration that we can build upon.
Great. Well, I think that's another great segue to Julia's comment. Are the design choices behind the tools shared anywhere? Some of it might end up in the atlas, and we would need to understand it in detail. And if I could just add on to that, yeah, I think any comments you have on how you would see what you think we need to be thinking about in Atlas terms, to interact with the work that you're doing, and whether there's policy or AVC proposals that you think could or should intersect with how you're building the product. And if the answer to any of that is yes, then I think some of us are going to need a lot more education.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think also some of my colleagues who have been contributed to Maker a bit longer than I have, or who have been involved into the ecosystem, will probably be able to answer this question with more nuance. But what I'm taking away is that maybe some of the design decisions or architectural system design decisions would be like you would love to read more about them and be able to track them. And I think that could definitely be done, or we can definitely provide documentation around that. And otherwise, I would either invite some of my colleagues to answer that question, or take it back to the team and see how the team would formulate an answer on it.
Okay, no takers on who's on the call to comment further. That's great. We can just keep iterating on that, and we'll have other chances, I'm sure, to talk with other members of the team. I think the next comment that's relevant, and let me know if I skip anyone, but True Name at 327 asks, will the reputation system be specific to Maker or function across all your users? We understand these tools will be offered and open to the industry.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I personally have a bit more background in decentralized identity, and we always say that decentralized identity, specifically in Web3 or crypto, is in the eye of the beholder. So I do think that reputation is always very defined by the context that you're operating within, and you might not be scored or rewarded for the same reputation or in the same ways in certain environments. So I do think that, for example, if we have a reputation system specific to Maker, it would have its own reputation metrics or specific ways in which you would be regarded, or in which a contribution of you would be valued. And yeah, that's potentially also even something that you could once again pour into a document model. What do the reputation metrics look like within the environment that you're operating? Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. Christian, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting presentation. Having some experience with RWAs in Maker and elsewhere, just, I guess, a few comments. One observation is that the reporting is a start, but I think right now it looks a bit static, right? I think at the end of the day, it should be much more tied to covenant and covenant breaches. I think with treasuries, maybe it's a little easier, but I guess I challenged the team to come up with, as program develops, kind of more color into the reporting. And then the next bit that I think is perhaps the biggest challenge, but maybe the most important, you mentioned about developing kind of institutional knowledge within the DAO. And having worked on a number of the RWAs within Maker, I can appreciate that. And you had that slide with Alice and Bob kind of making inquiries. What would be really interesting is to actually for any particular transaction, be able to capture not just the start of a document and the iteration of a particular document, but the negotiations and the decisions that go into the end result. Because I know from my experience in discussions with CES and others, there's a lot of decisions that are made and a lot of discussion that happens, like, why are we doing it this way? What about this way? How about this issue? It's doing transactions, even simple ones like RWAs, involve a great deal of choice and decision making. It's not just you go from A to B, but to be able to capture that, whether it's through communications on Discord, whether it's recording communications, between team members that are working things, so that you can, one, have transparency, and two, more importantly, document for posterity and for learning purposes why a decision was made to go one way versus another. And I think that would be something that would enable Maker and others to really kind of build upon a database. Because unfortunately, if you just work on the end document, that's all you get is the end state. And usually what happens is there's about 30 or 40 versions that get to that end state, and a whole bunch of decisions and omissions, sometimes purposeful, sometimes not, that go into that. And it would be, I think, useful to capture all of those decisions and omissions so that the DAO as a whole could learn of what was done and what was not done. So that's a bit of a challenge from my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we like a good challenge if you see the scope of what we're trying to build. But this is a really interesting topic to take along. How do you capture like the implicit layer of decision making, and how would you maybe pour that into a decision making tree, or how can you run as another observer through that decision making process? Gut feeling wise, I feel like a combination of the reputation system plus document modeling and some type of chat or communication system that ties into it could offer opportunities here. But for now, I'll also take this this remark to the team, and I already know that some of them will just have a field day trying to answer the question that you just have. So yeah, it's duly noted. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that discussion, Christian, and it's exactly the kind of thing we can put in our governance strategy, or maybe that's even a good thing in the stability scope proposal, where that's the perfect kind of, I think, high level observation and direction that should come from AVC members about what we want to see implemented in some way. We maybe don't know exactly how, but it's a way for us to call out for all the teams exactly all the things you just described. So I hope that you won't forget that point, and I'm sure it's burned in your memory from prior experience.
Yeah, it's this is all recorded, so we're gonna replay this as a team.
Oh, that's right. Of course.
We listen to it. But there's a good point that Layer Zero is also making in the chat. So behind the scenes, and that was definitely not highlighted in this presentation, but behind the scenes there is extensive conversations going on into how to use these ideas also on a legal front, how to provide contributors in crypto or decentralized organizations with the necessary tools to empower themselves, to protect themselves, to make sure that they are covering their bases. So also here is quite some development going on.
Well, we've got 6 minutes, and there's so many wonderful folks here in the room, and I don't think all of you are delegates who don't speak. So I want to remind anyone who's here, you're welcome to come off of mute and ask your questions or share comments. I don't know if Sisyphus, if you'd like to speak. I think that you had another comment about 10 minutes ago that maybe we didn't cover. Would you like me to read that, or would you like to speak on that point that you made about?
No, I
Okay,
was like,
yeah.
I guess I was like, curious if if you see the document model more as like a process routine, or is it more like a template that contributors can use to like to do reporting, or um I guess like the question was, hey, is the document model more a process, a routine, or is it more a template to do reporting in general? Um,
Yeah, a document model is a routine and a process in a backend way. But then when you open a document model in a document editor, then it becomes a traditional document that you can just interact with through an interface.
And if it's like a routine or a process, could it also, I guess with the versioning system, would the idea be to track how people contribute to a process as well, or to probably tie in different roles that like go into fulfilling a process or a routine, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So here you can start playing with concepts such as branches. So somebody works on a document, takes it into their personal storage, works on it for a while, then maybe recommits it or sends it back to the drive folder where it originally came from, signs it off with their private key, and then there can be a process of bringing those branches that those separate contributors have worked on their own back together. So that's one of the synchronization systems or methods that we are currently exploring.
And like, how would this tie into Fusion, for example? Could a document model also represent something like, hey, in order to deploy a spell, for example, X needs to happen, or I guess in terms of the deployment process, X needs to happen, and someone needs to tick a box. I know I was curious if like multiple people collaborate on a particular routine or process, if there's a way to signal to the other people, to the other roles that go into fulfilling that routine, that hey, my bit is done. I can pass the baton on now to I guess the next person that would especially if it's a larger process, like I don't know, deploying a new asset and that involves multiple teams. Just curious if like a document model could also have this way of signaling when a certain action has
Yeah.
been.
So in the question that you're asking, we're already layering a couple of applications and document models on top of each other. So we have the document models and then multiple people collaborating on it, multiple teams, and that then all needs to become visualized in Fusion. So I don't necessarily, I cannot necessarily confirm that will all happen in one document model, or that multiple document models come together and that from a central database or through the API interface that then drives Fusion, or just a dashboard in Fusion. That could be one of the ways. I think it will rather work like this than one document model that is then being contributed to by multiple parties. Also, a pretty specific architectural question that I might take to the team.
But would a document model, for example, could be used as a component for a certain client that could be built on top of Powerhouse's APIs, for example, or on top of Switchboard, like a process-specific interface
Absolutely.
that. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So document models and the data that we're generating with them, or capturing with them, better to say, that's absolutely intended to drive additional external interfaces or internal interfaces, or being sent to traditional organizations as a report. Yeah, absolutely.
So then as a DAO, for example, or as an operator as a DAO, well, then I could have this library of different processes, frameworks that I could integrate into my own operations, tools, clients, and sort of
Yes, correct.
have the ability to appreciate it.
No worries. We appreciate all of the very thoughtful questions.
Wow, this has been really terrific, and I think the explosive potential that you had some slides about, as LLM modeling and AI tooling and all of that progresses in the next several months and years. Sisyphus, to your point that I thought was really interesting, is as you're having this data modeling, but then AI's capability to do some modeling, like performance evaluation. So, you've got everyone being tracked in terms of who's contributing what. And I can imagine then the analysis of that data, right? Like what we'll be able to now do, even though I'm learning that the whole concept of data modeling and document modeling, document automation, that's not new, but our capabilities that we're, exploring with the gates, et cetera, where we think that is going. I mean, isn't that kind of really the big exciting part of your presentation, really, is like this next step of organizationally what we'll be able to do and apply. And I think in a DAO context, particularly around performance evaluation and monitoring in a way that's expert, this data structure, this document structuring and transaction-based stuff is gonna the unlock. It seems really exciting.
Yeah, you resonate some of the thoughts and ideas that we also had internally when we really started thinking about this concept. Yeah, the next actions are being taken. So there's definitely discussions going on to also see with the necessary parties how do we then implement this, and definitely how do you set up these data pipelines, and how do you clean up the data so that it becomes useful as a training set. But yeah, also to remind everybody, we are very much still in the phase where we are building the foundation, and it's very exciting to paint a picture of what will be possible. But the foundation always takes a bit more time to put it in place and to get the flywheel going for document model generation, for connecting all of the different applications with one another, and to really unlock the added value.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time and giving us the privilege of hosting you at Refi. We're just a few minutes over, but I want to open up the floor for any last minute comments from UT, from anyone else here from Powerhouse, any of our other guests, any of our ADs. All right, great.
No, I have another question for Tim. I guess, Steve, would you see it more as like the means for like performance monitoring, performance management, or I guess more as like probably Walter said in the last meeting, as having the guidelines, as having the frameworks for everyone to be sort of successful in how they operate and probably how they integrate DAO.
Yeah, absolutely the second. Like we're not trying to build a big brother. We're only trying to build a brother that helps you to achieve your goal, not one that watches you.
Best
If that
laid
makes
plans.
sense.
We'll see. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but overall, yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening in and the engaged discussion. I think some of the questions here were really spot on, and I'm looking forward to formulate an answer about them and get back to the community to keep you up to date of developments and where Powerhouse is going.
Great. Thank you very much. This is one meeting I'm definitely going to rewatch. I don't normally do that, but thank you all. That'll be it for today. We'll see you same bat time, same bat channel next week. Thank you all for being here. And the channel is open in the Discord for async conversation, follow up, chit chat throughout the week. Have a great rest of this week, everyone. Bye-bye.